It's time for a good old-fashioned image review. I haven't done one of these in quite some time, but I used to do them frequently after an on-location video, where I would basically go over the pictures from the on-location and kind of give some background information, you know, thought process, technical details, behind-the-scenes stuff. Think of it like a DVD commentary for the on-location video. Although as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that dates me pretty bad. DVD commentaries are kind of old by now. The wax cylinder, the Victrola of the on-location video. So I recently went out with my TLR to shoot some 6x6, and I shot a 6x17 shot as well. And those are the pictures we're gonna look at. So if you haven't seen that video, you may wanna take a look at that first. Of course, I made some prints because I love seeing my work on paper, and they came out beautifully. Also makes me feel like purchasing my own printer was worth it if I just randomly make prints now and then. Also, I'm going to be giving away 4 of these bad boys, 4 framed prints to some lucky viewers. So stay tuned till the end to find out how you can maybe become one of those lucky 4. So let's dive into it. And I want to start with what was my favorite picture from the video, and I think ended up being many people's favorite, which was the cloud of gnats in late afternoon light. And just before we get into it, someone left a comment that I gotta share with you. Cloud of Gnats opened for springtime vibes at the Greek back in 2014. Such a great show. Awesome show. So that's just like a perfect comment. So thanks, Omid K, I think. Yeah, Omid K, for that little chuckle. So Cloud of Gnats, great band name, and also a great photo, I think. So let's talk about this photo. What a lot of people pointed out is they can't believe I nailed the focus with the TLR. So the consensus seems to be that nailing focus on this shot would have been difficult anyway, but especially with a TLR. And I have some theories, because of course I do, on why focus might be especially difficult to achieve on a TLR. But let me explain, you know, how I got focus on this and why it actually wasn't as difficult as it seems. There's definitely some luck involved. You know, sometimes you do everything perfect and it's out of focus. Sometimes you do nothing right and it's perfectly in focus. A little bit of luck here. But the bigger issue is that, you know, it's a cloud of gnats. It's not a plane of gnats. It's a cloud. They're going back and forth and all over the place. So if you just focus kind of roughly in the cloud, they're moving around so much that there's actually a pretty good chance that a couple of them are going to fly right into the plane of focus when you take the picture. So I just kind of focused in the middle of the cloud, and sure enough, a few of them jumped right into the plane of focus when I took the picture. You can see this little guy down at the bottom. You can practically see his smile. There's a few in the middle there, tack sharp. So, you know, it's not as hard as it seems. But hey, I'll take the credit if you're going to give it. But the focus did come out exactly how I want on that. I wanted the background to be just that right amount of blur. And then, you know, a few of the gnats tack sharp. But there were a few pictures where I certainly didn't nail the focus. And I didn't share those with you, but I'll share them with you now. This one here, focus is off. I don't know why. It's not a difficult subject to shoot. It's not moving. It's a relatively flat plane. It's not a weird height or anything. I don't know why I missed it, but I did. Luckily, it's not that good of a photo to begin with, so who cares? But this one I also missed. I was trying to focus on the chimney and the antenna, and I'm just focused on nothing in particular. But that one kind of bums me out because I actually like that picture. I think it's a cool, almost abstract, super simple composition. And I do like the color palette of it with that setting sun light on the chimney. But that brings me to my theory on why I think it can sometimes be quite difficult to nail focus on a 6x6 TLR like this. So first off, it's medium format, 6x6. So you're dealing with a pretty large negative, so already the depth of field is very shallow. So if you're dealing with wide apertures where you're shrinking the depth of field even more, your plane of focus is razor thin. So you better get it perfect, otherwise it's gonna look like it's not in focus. So large negative is definitely tougher than on, say, 35mm. But I think on TLRs also, you have this problem sometimes where because you're looking through a lens different from the picture taking lens, the capture lens, that can create issues. So think of it like this. On this shot with the chimney, My camera's pretty low because it's a waist level finder, and I'm trying to photograph this chimney, so I'm tilted back pretty far. The bottom lens is a lot closer to the subject than the top lens. So that means the bottom lens actually technically needs a different focus setting than the top lens, but I can only see through the top lens. So it could be that I'm focusing with the top lens, but really the bottom lens is forward a bit, and so it's not matching what I'm seeing through the viewfinder. You know, that can happen when you're pointed down or pointed up. Because they're different distances, that could create an issue. Truthfully though, I don't know that that's what happened on this, because that would really only be a problem on subjects that are relatively close. You know, anything far away, you're doing a landscape or something, it don't matter. You know, tilt it up however you want. Subject's far enough away that, you know, an inch back is not going to make that big a difference. But it is something to consider when you're dealing with something relatively close, and that difference might be an issue. So that might have been what happened. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just sloppy and I suck at photography. That's a definite possibility. I want to show you a variation on that first shot, my favorite shot. So this one obviously a little bit closer. So those are the only 2 nat pictures I took on that day. Or you know, any day, now that I think about it, both of them I didn't think would turn out. I actually took the pictures, and then as I was walking away, I said to myself, those aren't turning out. But luckily they did. I don't like this one as much because the gnats aren't as clear in the photo. I don't think that's a focus thing though. I actually think it's a motion blur thing. Because I'm closer to them, they appear to be moving faster across the frame. And so the shutter speed wasn't quite fast enough to freeze them. But also on the first one, you see more of the house. The background is slightly more in focus, so you can kind of make out those important details like the sunlight streaking across the lawn, the sidewalk, the tree, the bunting. 4th of July bunting. Bunting! Yeah, the little half circles, American flags. It's called bunting. I remembered something. My brain's not complete crap yet. So you can see the bunting on the house, which I think is really cool. It gives it a very Americana feel, you know, springtime, mainly summertime actually, because that's normally up at, 4th of July, Independence Day. So the fact you can kind of make out the background just a little bit, I think helps the photo a lot. So I really like that shot. And it printed well too. Looks pretty good on paper. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about artistic influences and inspirations. If you follow my channel, you know that I tend to seek inspiration in my photography mostly from painters, music, directors, cinematographers, but not really photographers. I tend to not look at other photographers' work because I find that it's too close to home. And so rather than taking inspiration from their work, I oftentimes just end up copying their work. And I'd like to take inspiration. I don't really want to be copying anybody. So I try and stay away from photographers for the most part. But painters, I love because it's close enough that I can take inspiration without really copying them because it's just not possible. And one painter I've brought up many times before, and I'm sorry to bring him up again, Kenton Nelson. So he's a painter based here in Orange County. And he's been his work has been a massive influence on my work. I saw a bunch of his work when I was quite young in my early formative years of being a photographer, and it got embedded early and deep. So he's been a big inspiration in my work, and I just want to show you one of his paintings, and then I'll show you one of my pictures from this outing. So here's one of his paintings. Here's one of my pictures. Here's another one of his paintings. Here's another one of my pictures. Here's yet another one of his paintings. And here's that gnat picture. Is there a connection here? Is he seeking inspiration from that painter? I think he might be. Yeah, I don't know where the line is between inspiration and plagiarism, but I think I might have crossed it. I mean, even the color palette. Like, look at the greens. The quality of the greens. They're like a yellowish avocado green, and like that's the greens I have in a lot of my photos. I was not thinking Kenton Nelson paintings when I was out there. maybe I was. I wasn't consciously thinking Kenton Nelson painting, so I wasn't picturing his compositions when I was taking these compositions. It just goes to show how much like the things that influence us and that inspire us can really start to become subconscious and really direct your work. I don't know why it feels pretentious to call it your work. It can direct your style. Let's put it that way. So these inspirations can direct your style without you even realizing it. And I think that's why it's important to pick and choose your sources of inspiration and make sure it's something that even if you're not consciously trying to imitate it, you'd be all right if it bled into your work. So I obviously really love his paintings. I really love that style, but I think maybe I got to take my foot off the gas a little bit and try and steer my work so that it's not so blatantly copying this painter that I admire. You'll notice in Kenton Nelson's paintings, these examples, he's got a blurry background, very photographic looking. You'll notice in my pictures, a lot of these I had a real blurry background. And I want to talk about that blurry background. Particularly, I want to talk about the bokeh, or bokeh, depending on who you ask. I hate that word. It's a totally legitimate word. It's a useful word. It describes something very specific that I'm going to be talking about here. So it's a great word. I just kind of hate it because not everyone out there is going to remember this, but there was a time period in the photography community where the word bokeh just became like a hot button term you would just like throw out to be like, I'm a pro. Look at the bokeh on that picture. The bokeh on this lens. Oh, so nice. So I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth for that term. But it's a very useful term because what bokeh means, and I think it's of Japanese origin, but bokeh is the visual quality of the out of focus areas of a photo, particularly created by a particular lens. So when you look at a photo and you see the out of focus areas, and they can look different than the out of focus areas from another lens. And so you're comparing those two. What you're comparing is the bokeh. And the bokeh can sometimes be very pleasing. Sometimes it can be kind of ugly and wiry. Like I have a Canon 70 to 200 millimeter lens, and the bokeh on that is disgusting. It's wiry and weird and just, it looks terrible. But then I have another Canon lens, a 50 millimeter, that's got beautiful bokeh. Now the bokeh that a lens creates is controlled primarily by the shape of the aperture. So the aperture opening in a lens could be made up of 8 blades, in which case the aperture opening will be an octagon. It could be 6 blades, in which case the opening will be a hexagon. It could have curved blades, in which case the opening is always a circle. And it's kind of largely agreed upon, not by everyone, but a lot of people tend to like curved aperture blades because that circular aperture creates a milky, clean bokeh that a lot of people like. Now, this lens has a 5-bladed aperture. Not very many blades in there. And so I get a pentagon-shaped aperture. Now, if we look at this photo here, notice the little specular highlights in the background. Notice anything interesting about them? Well, yes, indeed. They are pentagons. So the out of focus areas take on whatever shape the aperture is. So a circular aperture, those would be circles. A octagon aperture, those would be octagons. A heart-shaped aperture, they would be heart-shaped. Oftentimes people don't like bokeh like that, in my experience. They want more blades. They want it to be smoothed out. They want it to be more rounded. But I gotta say, I love the pentagon-shaped bokeh of this lens. To me, it looks more like gems. It looks like diamonds. It looks like salt, you know, sharp-edged, glistening sparkles. I think it gives it some more character. It looks a little more sparkly and kind of interesting. So that's one thing, one more reason to really love this TLR. But that's the bokeh. So maybe an annoying term, but a useful term. By the way, I was messaging with someone on Instagram. He didn't use the term bokeh, he used blur rendition. And I thought that was way better. So maybe I'll just start calling it blur rendition. I think it's more descriptive that way. I mean, you don't sound like a freaking pro. Oh, the bokeh on that lens. Oh man, the bokeh. All right, going to the backyard shots. Cutesy little shots here. You know, maybe they're a little more staged than I would normally like to do on my photos. Did some variations here. Flower shots. I've, you know, shot more flowers in my time as a photographer than I can possibly remember. But there was one photo I shot in my backyard there that I completely forgot to include in the video. And that would have been fine, except it ended up being one of my favorite pictures. This crow flying off of the telephone pole. I don't know why I just forgot to include it, but I really like this shot. I actually waited there, saw the crow land, and I waited for it to take off. Now, one thing I'm trying to make sure isn't clouding my judgment on this, I actually want to talk about. I think it's kind of an interesting thing to notice in yourself, because I've noticed it in myself. But I've seen it happen with photographers, especially street photographers. And again, I'm including myself in this. This happens to me too. I've seen it with photographers where sometimes you're trying to capture a specific moment. You know, you're waiting for the person to walk in just the right spot. You're waiting there. You're waiting for the car to get in just the right spot. And you're so hyper-focused on getting the timing. Yeah, if I can just hit it right then, it's going to be perfect. You're so hyper-focused on it that when you get it, bam! You're so stoked that you nailed the timing. You know, it feels like a successful hunt that you're just like, oh, I nailed it, bro. Look at this picture. And like, you're completely overlooking the fact that the picture actually sucks. Like, yeah, you got the timing, but it's still a shitty picture. You know, I've found myself falling into that where my own excitement for capturing the timing completely clouds the fact that it's not that good. You just got the timing right. So I hope that's not what I'm feeling with this. I think it's actually a good composition, and I do like the moment that it captured. Not earth-shattering. I know this isn't going to win a Pulitzer Prize, but hopefully I'm not getting clouded by my own excitement for getting the shot. All right, low vantage point I want to talk about with the TLR. So one thing that's really nice about a TLR, especially with a waist level finder, is it's real easy to get low vantage points because the bottom lens is so low to the ground. You're looking through a waist level finder, so you can get low angles without breaking your back. And I was playing with that obviously a lot on this shoot, you know, the grass, things like that. So kind of seeing the world through a new perspective, I think is fun. And it's also great for photographing sweet, precious little angels. Look at him. Actually, he's kind of an asshole. I would murder for him. So yeah, good for photographing pets and you know, little kids and stuff like that, because you can get down on their level, and that's cool. Cool angle. This looks like a parallax mistake. You know, like I accidentally clipped the top of his face because the bottom lens was lower. This was actually intentional. So what I did was I framed it up exactly how I wanted, just like that. And then I just moved the camera up. And I do this frequently with the TLR. I basically just kind of look at the bottom lens and I slide it up until the bottom lens looks like it's where the top lens was. And that actually does a pretty damn good job of correcting for parallax. That's what I did on this, and it nailed the composition. So one thing I really like about this shot, you may not have noticed, but look at the cement right under his tongue. A little drop of drool. What a disgusting, wild animal. God, I love him. Anyway, this shot I shared with you, but this one I didn't. Felt like I had too many pictures of my dog in there. So one thing I want to talk about on the light on these though, you'll notice there's a nice illumination on his, on the right side, his left. That's actually reflecting off of the house. So the light is hitting the siding on my house and it's filling in this shadow created by my garage. So he's actually in complete shade, but you get that nice glow on the side because it's reflecting off the house. Same thing actually happened on the picture of the oranges in the basket. You can see there's some illumination on the right side. It looks almost like I had a reflector out there. Well, I kind of did. It was the side of my office in that case. So the sunlight was hitting that, bouncing into the shadows. Those are the kind of things, by the way, you really want to pay close attention to when you're out taking pictures. I'm always looking at that stuff. Where's light hitting and bouncing in? Because sometimes you'll walk up to a shadow and just be like, man, this shadow's gorgeous. What's going on? And then you look, it's like, oh, there's a cream colored wall right here that's bouncing this beautiful warm light in there. If you're into photographing portraits and stuff, ooh, put your model in there. Ooh, you got some good light. Other pictures taken around the neighborhood, these are ditties. Having fun with the camera, but not really taking every picture so seriously. But then I did get this shot, which I actually really like. And I may be alone in this, but this ended up being one of my favorites as well. I like the complexity of it, and yet simplicity. I think it's kind of cool. But this actually reminds me quite a bit of kind of abstract paintings. So, you know, something from like Piet Mondrian. Is that how you pronounce that?
Piet Mondrian. Piet Mondrian.
Piet Mondrian. So Piet Mondrian. You've probably seen his paintings before, but didn't know who it was. I shouldn't say that. You probably knew who it was. I didn't know who it was. Or, you know, the work of Theo van Doesburg. Doesburg. Lest you think I'm actually cultured, which I'm not, I literally just went to Google and typed in famous abstract painters. So one painter I actually do know and I do really love, this kind of reminds me of his work, Hiroshi Nagai. Nagai. Not gonna work here anymore anyway. I love his work. It's kind of this retro wave, almost 8-bit looking paintings. Really, really cool stuff. It may be a stretch to say this reminds me of his work. Maybe I just wanted to bring up Hiroshi Nagai because I love his work. But I don't know, the gradient of blue just reminded me of his paintings and kind of the clean straight lines. So I like that shot. The remaining 6x6 shots, you know, I got pictures of this ivy working its way up the telephone pole. There's one I didn't share with you because I felt it was too similar to the first one. So just kind of fun stuff, playing with good light and that, you know, idea of plants overtaking human structures. These trees, not very springtimey. They look more wintertimey, but I thought the light on them was beautiful. And then finally this shot here, I just wanted to point out, because I don't think you would have been able to see it on the video. It's the law, clean up after your dog. Be a good neighbor. Pick up your dog's shit. Smile for the cameras. That's a classy sign right there. I thought that was kind of funny because so many of these pictures have kind of a 1950s America vibe, you know, being an Old Town Orange and the telephone poles and all that kind of stuff. Nothing snaps you back to the present like a sign that says, clean up your dog's shit. Smile, you're on camera. I don't think those are floating around too much in the 50s. But, oh, one final shot that I didn't share. Again, the theme of plants overtaking man-made structures. I didn't share this shot because I've actually taken a picture of this house before, very similar composition on my Texas Leica, and I think I shared it in another video, but that's all the 6x6. So lastly, I want to talk about the 6x17 shot. So the kind of main course of the video. So the light on this, as I explained in the video, was a soft kind of directional light. And that occurs when you have sunlight where thin cloud cover or maybe a single cloud moves in front of the sun and it acts as a diffusion box. But it's different than complete overcast. Complete overcast, you lose all shadows, essentially. So you really can't get a sense of the direction of the light. But when you have just like a single cloud or a real thin cloud cover, you can still tell where the sunlight is coming from, but it's very soft. And that's a diffused directional light. You can tell where it's coming from, but it's diffused. And you can tell that always by looking at the shadows. So if we look at this here, you can see the shadow coming off of that post on the left. You can see there's definitely a shadow. It's going back and to the left, so we can tell where the light's coming from. Even the entire bus stop is casting a shadow on the left. You can tell the billboard on the right is a little bit more illuminated than the one on the left. And the tree on the right side. You can see there's light on the right side of it, but not on the left. So we have all these cues to tell us that the light is coming from the right. But none of the shadows are harsh enough to be full directional light. You know, we can't see the shape of the tree shaded onto the sidewalk, so it's not full directional. Now, this type of light I often seek out. I actually really love this type of light. When I'm shooting buildings and scenes like this, I often seek it out and I go through a great effort to try and time my picture for when there's going to be like a single cloud in front of the subject. This picture, I didn't want it. I actually wanted directional light. I wanted you to be able to see harsh, crisp shadows. And that was a little disappointing to me that I didn't get that light. But now that I've had some time away from the photo, now that I've seen it in print, I actually think this is the best light. Or I'm talking myself into it. I don't really know. But I do think it's the best light right now for a few reasons. One, I think the shadow from that tree on the right would have been very distracting. It would have been big and bulky and blocked up. The bus stop itself would have been like half illuminated. Which I think probably wouldn't have looked good. So I think this diffused light actually is very good. But there's another thing about this type of light that I really like is when you have that cloud in front of the sun, the diffusion is eating up the intensity of the light a little bit. So the light's a little darker. As a result, you have to increase your exposure, of course, to compensate, just like you need longer exposures on cloudy days versus sunny days. And what's interesting about that is the sky way off in the background, like just above this house roof, that's not really changing brightness. It's staying pretty consistent because it's got illumination on it, and that doesn't really vary all that much depending on what this one cloud does in front of your subject. So what happens is if that cloud passes in front of the sun and shades your subject, you increase your exposure, and then now the sky way off in the distance appears brighter in the photo. If it's full sun on the foreground subject, you have to reduce your exposure and then the sky in the background gets darker. I actually generally don't like deep, rich blue skies in my photos anymore. I used to love it, but now it's too much. Like I never use a polarizer or anything to darken the blue sky. I don't like it to be a rich, deep blue. This diffused light, that one cloud in front of the sun, it's diffusing the light, I have to increase my exposure, and so the background sky gets brighter, and now I get that perfect shade of blue. I get those perfect puffy white clouds. So that's one thing I really like about this type of light. It's kind of cool. So I hope that made sense. It's a little hard to explain sometimes, but the last thing I want to leave you with has to do with kind of a philosophical take on this. So in the video, you could see that I was generally disappointed at how things were going. I felt like everything was conspiring against me. You know, the ivy had been torn off, it had been trimmed, the clouds weren't cooperating, people at the bus stop were forcing me to wait, and the light was getting what I felt worse. So there were all these things going on that made me feel like it wasn't going right. It couldn't go right. There's no way for me to get the picture I wanted to get. But now that I've taken some time away from the photo, it kind of feels like everything went perfectly to get the photo exactly how it should have come out. Like I was wrong to picture it the way I pictured it. The way it came out was way better, and everything was helping me. Everything was helping to make sure it came out as its best version, regardless of what I wanted it to be. You know, the vines getting trimmed and everything, I think it's nice having that exposed brick right there. As I talked about in the video, it kind of highlights the struggle between man and nature. The guys kicking me out was actually perfect timing because the sun broke right after they kicked me out. And if it had broke, I would have gotten a picture with sunlight hitting it, and I think that wouldn't have looked as good. So again, maybe I'm talking myself into it, I don't know, but it kind of doesn't matter. Because my point is, I think going forward, I'm going to try and have the mindset of things aren't conspiring against me. They're conspiring for me. Now, of course, neither is true. There's no photography gods up there that give a damn about my photo. They're not moving the clouds into the right spot or the wrong spot or whatever. It's neither. So I might as well just embrace that everything's conspiring for me. So how it looks right now, that's how it's supposed to look. Within reason, I'm still me. I'm still going to go back to the location half a dozen times to make sure I get it at the perfect time. But, you know, in a situation like this, I'm going to try and remember this as an example of like, hey, buddy, the world's not conspiring against you. It's trying to help you out. Maybe just go along with it. Because I do really like how this turned out. So that's it. That's all my esoteric thoughts on this stuff. So the print giveaway. I'm going to be giving away 4 framed prints. If you win, if you're one of the 4 that wins, you can choose any of the 6x6 shots that I've shared today. You'll get to pick whichever one you want. And if all 4 pick the same one, that's fine. I got 4 frames and I can print multiples. But I'm going to be giving away those 4 to 4 randomly selected contributors because I am so grateful for anyone who sends me a few bucks out of the goodness of their heart. Anyone who has made a contribution of $5 or more between April 15th, 2024 and May 15th, 2024 will be automatically entered. And what the hell, we'll give away this one too. I don't know if anybody wants this. It won't be framed, but we'll give away that one as well. And I'll cover shipping anywhere in the world on all 5 of these. So if you're interested, you can buy me a beer and then might get a framed print out of it. All right. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, I'll do more of them. I hope you guys liked it. But whatever the case, I'll see you next time.